Conference will now be recorded.
Let me try again. Today is May the 26th, 2020. Time is now 5 p.m. The go-to meeting of the City of Trinidad work session will now come to order. We have a pretty lengthy discussion tonight, several items, actually 7 items. What I want to do is I'm going to take number 3 and move that up to number 1, and then we'll follow everything else in succession. So what we do is we'll have the Economic Development Department revolving loan fund start. We'll go to discussion the method to fill the unexpired term of Anthony Matei in his seat on South Central Council of Governments, and liaison to the Arts and Cultures Advisory Committee. City of Trinidad COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Program date, which would be next. The Fox Theater lease. The first quarter marijuana allocation. And item 5 would be liquor licenses and temporary modification of premises. That would be 6. And 7, road to recovery. So let's go ahead and get started with item 1, which is the Economic Development Department revolving loan fund. I'm going to turn it over to Wally because I think he is going to have someone online to explain the program. Wally, are you available and can you hear?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead and take it over, please.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so this is actually something that we mentioned to you all during the spring economic development report that we did before COVID hit, that Jeff Peterson of the Center for Community Innovation and I had been speaking with the Colorado Lending Source about forming a revolving loan fund that allows us to support our local businesses at a very low interest rate, or by offering loans to them at a very low interest rate. The thing that actually has happened since then is, with all of this COVID-19 stuff, there's been a lot of money that has been feeding into these types of programs. So specifically, the Colorado Lending Source, who we had already been working with on this before, contacted us and told us that they have additional funds that are specifically allocated for towns in eastern Colorado, and they considered us one of those towns. So basically, we have the opportunity to create this revolving loan fund where the City of Trinidad puts in, I want to give you the exact number if I have it here, $45,774.54. That money can be matched 9-to-1 by the Colorado Lending Source and this group that is making this money available for Eastern Colorado. So basically, we can turn just under $50,000 into $500,000 that we can then lend out to our local businesses at a 0% interest rate, both to help them get through this COVID-19 period, but also just so that they can have capital to try their business ventures. I have on the phone with us today both Jeff Peterson from the Center for Community Innovation and also Mike O'Donnell from the Colorado Lending Source, who are better prepared to answer some questions that I'm sure you all will have. But I'll just kind of leave it there and yeah, let you all take it.
Is Mike going to explain the loan process, or who's going to do this?
Yeah, Mike, are you on?
I am, yes. I'd be very happy to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yep, thank you for making time. I hope you can hear me okay. Actually, let me just put you in my ear. So, yeah, the process we go through, Colorado Lending Source, we've been around for about 30 years. We do a lot of what we call Colorado Main Street loans up until this crisis, and now we've switched to doing like emergency loans, primarily in rural communities. The way the process works is we have a relatively simple application. It's about 3 pages. People complete that application, and you would set the criteria as to what sort of businesses you would like to apply. You know, for example, Castle Rock, when they did a program, wanted it only to be bricks and mortar businesses with employees, so they didn't really want to work with self-employed independent contractors. But you would make those decisions. The applicant would complete the application, submit it to us. we would take it through our underwriting process and present it to my board-appointed loan review committee, because we're a non-profit. And once they approve the loan, we would then let the borrower know and then prepare the documents that the borrowers would need to sign for us to then close the loan and fund the loan. And so the intent would be these would be primarily 2-year loans with no payments for the first 6 months. So it would amortize over that 18 months that are remaining. There would be no fees. You know, if you as the city or the community, you know, paid the interest rate down to 0 and paid the typical 1% fee, then it would be a fairly simple process for the borrower to get hold of the funds, and we would usually fund the loans within about a couple of days, and usually within about a week of actually receiving an application. 7 to 10 days is usually how long it takes to fund most loans. And then we would report back to you on a monthly or a quarterly basis, so you got a sense of seeing who was actually being helped and what the impact was, because we do collect statistics about whether the business is woman-owned and how many jobs they hope to create, all of those sort of things. So we as an economic development organization need to collect that, and we're very happy to share that with you.
So, as you can see, I sent you all a council communication this past week that does highlight a lot of these details, but as Mike just made clear to you all, a lot of how this program will work would actually be decided by us, or by you, the city council. And for example, we have tentatively just put that the maximum loan amount that would be available to Trinidad businesses would be $10,000. Since we have a pool of $500,000 available, that would allow us to give out 50 of these business loans. And the other information that you received from me before this council meeting, all the businesses that have received financial assistance through our COVID-19 relief program, under 50 have expressed an interest in applying for a loan like this, but I do think that might become a little bit higher if more people find out that this is actually a 0% interest loan that they're applicable for. Additionally, I believe that if we do not spend the entire $500,000 in this loan fund, then we would not need to contribute the entire $45,000. And really, it's almost like a pay-as-you-go sort of thing, that if businesses do request funds, we will put in that money to be matched 9-to-1 by the Colorado Lending Source. The other points that I just highlighted on here is basically this first came from a draft that was given to me of what the city of Castle Rock did to help their businesses during COVID-19. And so some of these things in here, I was questioning if we needed to offer the same services that they did. One thing I put in here was their loan usage said that it was good for payroll, rent, utilities, and inventory. I added in mortgage there. Businesses that we are working with that don't rent are paying loans to own their building. And then also I did want to consider if we want to only make this available to folks who have tried to buy PPP loans. Just because I know that some of our really small businesses here in town just weren't applicable. They didn't have enough employees, they didn't have enough of a revenue stream to prove that they could apply for those loans. And so I don't necessarily want to close off this opportunity to those businesses. So those are just a few notes that I wanted to add on to make this council communication that I sent to you all make a little bit more sense.
Okay, let's go ahead and get some comments, if any, from council. Mr. Goodall, do you have any questions?
I do. So our contribution would be that is money that's not recovered. How does that work?
I would like to let Mike answer this, and I believe that the answer is that this is what we pay into this, which covers the interest for these loans. So basically, it'd be the city of Trinidad that would be paying the 3% interest rate that these loans would be, but making them available to our businesses at a 0% loan. There needs to be a $5,000 in a origination fee for the relief, and then $25,000 is to cover the businesses that default on these loans. And so,
I'm sorry, are these secured loans?
They typically are not secured. We ask for a personal guarantee from the applicant owners, anyone who owns 20% or more, but these tend to be a little more risky as small loans.
Okay.
And that's why we have a loss reserve fund, because we anticipate, unfortunately, that there will be a default. And what we're doing is we've borrowed the $500,000, so we've got that, and what we're asking council to do is subsidize the cost so that it costs a lot less for your borrowers or your businesses, so that they can get the benefit of that and reinvest the funds back into the community.
All right, that's all I have.
Ms. Grego?
I have a couple of questions. So if the borrower defaults, is the city liable or we penalized if they default on that loan?
No, you're not, because we will separately reserve funds as well. The idea is typically after the non-profit lender, when we charge an interest rate on the loan, we take a goodly portion of the interest rate we charge above the cost of funds to reserve the losses. So what you're doing by making the loan payments on behalf of the borrowers is you're helping to contribute not only just to our overhead so we can break even, but also to help us with some extra losses, because we just feel that it's just a slightly more risky environment than it used to be, and so we might have slightly heavier losses. No cost to the city.
Okay. Under the challenges, I guess Wally highlighted these about the additional interest rate absorption by the city and also additional administrative fees. Can you give us a further explanation on those?
Typically, as I said, what happens is when we borrow funds, we usually mark up the funds to cover our administrative costs and overhead. Typically, there's an interest rate spread above the cost of funds, so by you paying down that interest rate from 3% to 0, we still get our spread, which allows us to reserve the losses. And then there's just a 1%, like a loan origination fee that we charge that helps us process all of the work at the front end to get the loan funded. So it's purely just to help us manage our costs. That's what we're doing.
Okay. And there's no additional administrative fees other than what's listed above?
No fees. So no fees to the borrower other than perhaps a wire transfer fee to move the funds in, but there's no prepayment penalties or costs for the 0% loans. They can pay it off at any time should they wish to. And it's really just to try and redirect funds, because we want to really focus our fund on eastern Colorado, and you're on the right side of the state. So, and I, to be honest, live way out in Yuma County, so but we're based out of the Front Range here. But the intent is to really help businesses, because not always, people don't always think of the south of the state, or the southeast or the south. So the northeast.
Any other questions, Ms. Grego? Ms. Ogletree?
My question are more for Wally. Excuse me. What kind of businesses have expressed interest or need for this kind of a loan? And secondarily, is $10,000 going to be enough to make a difference to keep the business going?
Sorry, I need to actually pull that up to show you what type of business. It's been an array of different types of businesses. It was just a question on our questionnaire that we sent out asking how the COVID-19 relief funds have affected those businesses and what they think we can do to better support them. One question on there was, would you be interested in taking advantage of a 0 to 2% interest rate loan to help you get through this? And yeah, like I said, I think it was 15% of the businesses said that they would be interested in something like that. So it's not any like select industry or anything. For the $10,000, I think that we could offer more. The city of Castle Rock, which, as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of taken from, they offered $25,000 per loan, but they also had a fund of over $2 million. that they had been able to put together through doing a similar program. We thought that it's just less expensive to run business here than in a more affluent community such as Castle Rock. And plus, we did have a little bit of a fear that if we offered too high of a loan amount, that we wouldn't be able to meet the need. If more than 50 businesses did try and apply, we wouldn't want to make it so that some of them couldn't get that funding. And we thought 50 would be a good amount to try and meet.
Do you have a sense of what industries in town are really hurting?
Obviously, I think the restaurants are hurting a lot, retail stores, and right now, just any business that is shut down because of COVID-19 are hurting more than others. I will say that this isn't an idea that just came around because of COVID, though. This was a plan that we wanted to do anyways, just to help our businesses find capital for their businesses. So it's not even necessarily intended exclusively for businesses that are hurting. It's more just intended to help our business community try and find capital to make some of their businesses and ideas come to life.
So kind of as an investment as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, and honestly, it's just comparatively to us doing this relief program that we just did, that was $300,000 that is just gone now, where this is $50,000 that would create $500,000 that would be a rotating thing, so it allows us to assist more businesses. So it just seems, for the amount of money we're putting into it, there is a high potential for returns.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williamson.
Hey, Wally, I was wondering, I'm sure there's outliers both on the low side and the high side, but do you have an idea what an average for rent or mortgage is for some of the businesses that would you be looking at lending this to?
I have not added that up, but I will say, yeah, it varies very, very much. We had some people that said their rent is $200 a month, and I think we had one that said its rent was $30,000 a month. So, yeah, it varies very widely in our community. But if you give me a couple minutes, I might actually be able to get an average for you.
I'll admit that's I thought that maybe a heavy lift, but it's just something I'm interested in. So the loan is a 3% loan.
I believe that
Normally
was
3%, yeah, normally 3%, but you're buying it down, so it's 0%.
Okay. So if Trinidad, the city of Trinidad, is providing roughly 10% of the loan funds, but 100% of the loan funds will be being paid back by the people that borrow it. For the sake of discussion, let's be super optimistic and say there's no defaults. What happens with those remaining funds? That's the way that your agency makes a profit.
No, this is what's called a revolving loan fund. So what happens is that we borrow the funds to lend to businesses, so it's not like you have free money sitting around. So we'll have to pay the principal back that we're borrowing plus some interest. But what we do is the difference between what we lend it out for and what we pay for it, a little bit of that comes to administrative overhead, but the rest is revolved. So this is the start of a revolving loan fund, which over time will allow, as the funds come back in, we can lend them out again. So essentially it will, in 2 or 3 years from now, people probably won't be looking for 0% interest rate loans, but won't have as much need to really struggle to get back on their feet. So over time we'll be able to re-lend the funds out at a slightly higher rate. That'll be after all the loans come back in.
Mr. Williamson, on that, the thing about it is that being that they're going to have to provide personal guarantee, that's going to follow them even if they do default.
No, I get that. It's just that we would be providing 10% of the initial funds that would, I'm sure everyone would be hoped would be paid back at 100%. So, just curious as to that. But I can read further later.
Okay. Mr. Shu?
Yeah, the only thing I would question is that, you know, on the loan for the businesses, some of the businesses aren't open yet. Are they going to be eligible for it? I mean, I understand that that's what it's for, to get them back in business, but some of these may not be open for quite a while. Are they going to be eligible, and we're the ones that are going to determine what the loan is going to be to them?
I think some of that depends on what you all decide. But then also, I believe that they would be going through a process where they would be approved for these loans. So if the corridor lending source finds that for some reason they are not capable of paying back these loans, I believe they would just deny them. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. For example, I just approved a loan this morning for Lamar, and again, it's a restaurant. It's basically shut, but they're trying to get ready to reopen back up. And the fact that they don't have any payments on this one, 6 months at least, means that at least they can keep, you know, the utilities on and the rent paid until they can get to the other end of this, hopefully by the end of summer. So what we do is we'll ask the people to show us what they did last year, at least in 2019. And that will be, you know, if they did okay last year, we think they'll do okay next year. And so that's going to be a lot of where we actually look. If they are a brand new startup business, we might ask them a few more questions, but that doesn't preclude them from applying for this loan either. But really, you know, we're not a bank, we're a non-profit, but bankers always look backwards to look forward. And although I don't like to do that, the 2019 tax return on financials will be our best indication of whether we think that they'll be around in 2021.
Any other questions, Mr. Shu?
No, that's
Okay.
what we do.
You know, my questions is, of course, so out of our pocket, we're looking at 45,000. Is that correct, Wally?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Or roughly, slightly more than that, but yes.
okay, so that's fine. Now, here's the thing that I'm wondering about. My concern is, you know, this COVID-19, we're in just the first wave. You know, they keep talking that there's a high probability of a second wave. That's going to put a lot of pressure on these additional businesses. And I don't know if this money could be provided for a second wave additionally afterwards. Mike, is that something that you guys could do if the city wanted to provide another 45,000 if there is a second wave?
Yes, I'd be happy to look at that. I'm hopeful that there won't be, and then all this gets resolved relatively quickly. But you're right, that we don't really know what the future will be. But we would, again, we've got funds to deploy on these plans, and we'll deploy them anyway. What you're doing with those funds is making it much less expensive for people in Trinidad than it is in Lamar or some other communities. But yes, I think we can raise additional funding, and that's part of my job here as well, to try and find more funds.
Have you, being that you're borrowing the money for this yourself, has your company or your nonprofit talked to the lending company that if there is a second wave and because businesses are shut down again, to offer them maybe a little bit of extra time to pay, or extending their payments, because that is something that's going to come up if this does show up as a second wave.
Correct, and we do that a lot actually. As a non-profit lender, we have a little bit over $12 million in loans, sort of like this, around the state of Colorado, and all of them are on at least 6 months deferral at the present time. And if things don't improve quickly, then we ourselves, you know, will be able to continue to defer or work with people or reduce their payments or extend the terms. We do all of these things all the time. We're not as black and white as some banks are. So that's the benefit. That's why I'm in this industry is that we do have a lot more flexibility, and we really want to keep businesses alive, and we want to keep people employed, and that's really my passion. So
Okay.
we'll do what we can to make sure that they stay.
Okay. And Wally, it sounds like to some extent that either economic development for the city of Trinidad, and I don't know how much council will be involved as far as any vetting of any of these businesses. That's kind of what I gathered, that we're going to be involved there somehow. Can you explain?
As far as I know, we will not actually be super involved with that process. That would be more the Colorado Lending Source would be taking that on. And part of that was that we had two options. Was one that they lend us the money and that we lend it out. But in our city charter, I believe that we're technically not actually allowed to lend out money. And so we worked with Colorado Lending Source for them to manage it. And then they would have this underwriting team that would review the loans.
Okay.
Correct, Mike?
That's correct, yes. And then we would give you like a report, each monthly report of how frequently you launch it, just some summaries and activities of this stuff, so
Okay.
that you can understand what's going on as well.
Okay. You know, I don't have any other questions. I know Jeff Peterson is on the phone. Do you, Jeff, if you're still on, do you have anything that you need to add to the conversation?
Yeah, just real quickly, thank you, Mayor. One, I'm just thrilled that we have this potential with Colorado Lending Source. These guys are, have a long track record of helping communities, and Mike has really, from our initial discussions with Mike, he's really levered up, and now this fund has really grown in size, so it can be really impactful. A second little comment is, Wally and I talk a lot about how we help to build sort of the ecosystem for small businesses to start up or to survive in these times. And as we look ahead at the commons of space to create and how we create programs to help small businesses get started, this is a revolving loan program that can last, this could be just a fixture of what Trinidad does to support small businesses. So this is just a very first step of what can be a very long and lasting program. And then lastly is, I'd really like to lean in on the marketing skills of Wally. We all know how, Wally's got some strong marketing chops, and this is a great opportunity for the city to demonstrate that, everybody always wonders what happens to marijuana. How do we leverage that? And what is this doing to help things grow? And this is a community to show that, there's people hard at work at the city with an eye on the ball of how do we make small businesses grow. So there's a lot of positives in this, both short term and long term, and I'm just excited that Mike and his team are able to do this.
I agree with you that this can be a long-term possibility for investment to our community. So I guess we'll just at this point, Les, what do we need to do? Does this have to come in front of council as a resolution, as an ordinance to approve this? What do we need to do?
Mayor, I believe in a minimum of resolution. I want to talk to Roger about that, but it would need to be voted on in an action item for council on a regular meeting agenda. That's absolutely correct. I think probably an ordinance.
Okay. Well, go ahead and discuss that with her and Mike and see what you determine needs to be done. Okay.
Will do.
Wally, Mike, Jeff, thank you for your input. And we'll give that some really serious consideration, because as we know, local business is they're in a great need right now. So we'll see if we can move forward with the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And Mike, thank you for joining us on the call today. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 2, which is the discussion of method to fill unexpired term of Anthony Matei. We'll talk about that first. And I don't know Les, do you want to cover what the policy is, or actually what our charter says, or do you want me to read it?
Well, Mayor, I will tell you, the charter doesn't give us a lot of direction on a vacancy for a council member. The main thing the charter says is that the remaining council members have to fill the vacancy within 45 days. That's the main charter provision. And so, if you have anything else, Mayor, you wanna add, I'd be happy to have you look at it. But that portion, for those of you who wanna refer to it, section 5.14 of the home rule charter. But Mayor, if I could, I'd like to just kind of launch into a discussion of what I am proposing and what, and having spoken to Mike and Andre, I think they kind of joined in this recommendation. It's something that we have done before, although we weren't meeting virtually like we are now when we previously filled a vacancy on council. Do you have any questions or things you want to say, Mayor?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to read this within that 5.14. It does say he or she shall, so just to make sure, shall serve only until the next regular municipal election, at which time the elector shall elect a council person and or mayor to succeed or serve the remainder of the unexpired term, if applicable. So Anthony's term is how much left?
It would be until the next election, Mayor. So it would stand for election a year from November. So that would be November of 2021, right, to be sworn in January of 2022. If I get anything wrong, anyone please correct me, but I believe that is when the election would be held and the position filled.
And council does...
Me, Anthony, and Karen come in together.
Right.
You know, and council does, like you said, council does have the authority to choose from anyone who puts in an application at this time. And if for some reason or another that we cannot come to terms as to who to elect or to who to appoint, it goes into an election, which we're going to make sure we try to not get into that because that's costly and timely. So go ahead and continue there, Council.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and council members. So to begin, we will be advertising and posting and letting the world know the vacancy. And what we are proposing is that there be a deadline of applications for aspiring applicants of June 11th. And we are recommending that. Not only does that give people a fair amount of time, but that way we can have the applications in your council packet on Friday the 12th, so that this could all be done in your regular meeting of June 16th. And so what I am recommending is that you conduct interviews and do the voting process all in that meeting. And part of the reason, that being the 16th, part of the reason why I recommend that procedure is because if you have the applicants and then you do the interviews and then you wait before you do the voting, you're going to be subjected to a lot of pressure, a lot of people trying to lobby you for who they think that you should have fill the vacancy. So I think it's better if you just, again, do it all in one shot. Now I want to say that, and I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead, but I want to say that I think it is best if we have all of you on that date for that meeting, all of you in City Hall. Now, not in council chambers, because that's impossible. And we're still not doing that, and that would be unwieldy. But what I'm proposing is that 2 of you be in offices in the basement, like one of you could sit where Flora Pacelli normally sits, one of you back where Brittany Flores is, then 2 of you on the 2nd floor. We have 1 of you in Tara's old office, 1 of you in Mike's old office, and then 2 of you upstairs. And we can work that out. As Mayor, I know you're always in council chambers, so we can have a person back down the hallway. The reason why that is being suggested is because of the voting process. I was thinking about that, and I was speaking to Mike last week, and we were thinking that we could have a process whereby you would either email votes to us or you would text your votes to us. And not only is that also cumbersome, but it's hard to preserve for purposes of the record regarding a quorum request. Now let that just kind of ruminate, okay? And the reason why I have suggested the City Hall thing is because when you're voting, we can literally have someone run around and gather your paper ballots, so we immediately have a paper trail and your vote that will have your name on it and will be signed by each of you. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, and I always do. The reason why we do this process is because it can be kind of uncomfortable for you. Let's say you have 7 applicants, okay? When you go to do the selection procedure, when you go to vote, it can be kind of difficult for council to say, okay, I vote for you and you and you as your narrowing it down to finalists, and I reject the others, right? And people that are like online and looking at you and hearing what's going on. So we do this paper ballot so that people will know the result of the election immediately, but they won't know how you voted for 72 hours, after 72 hours, when we get a quorum request. And we will, but for purposes of voting that night, you can vote confidentially. And so, does that make sense so far?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. So then what is also being proposed is that depending on the number of applicants you get, and I think the kind of cutoff period should be, or the cutoff number should be 6 and above, or 5 and below. If it's 6 and above, I think in the first voting round, all of council should vote for 4. Okay? So let's say you have 7 applicants. Each of you should vote for 4 of those people. Now, that's going to be 24 votes cast in total. Some of you will be voting for, let's say, the lowest vote getter. Some of you will be voting for the second to the lowest. Some of those votes will be, down below. But if you all, and I think you all should be required to cast the set number of votes. So if in the first round you vote for 4, we would be looking for the 3 top vote getters and the 3 finalists of that first round of voting. Make sense so far?
Okay, Les, I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
On the interviews, is that going to be done on an executive session platform or?
No. And I will tell you, Mayor, it needs to be done in open session.
Okay.
It cannot be, and I'm sorry, we can do that for city manager interviews. We can't do it for city council interviews. It has to be in an open meeting.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
You bet. And I think, you should probably allow like 5 to 10 minutes depending on, like their opening remarks when you're doing the interviews, their comments and then the questions that the council will have. But again, back to the voting procedure. So 6 or more, you vote for 4, you have to cast 4 votes. And then we gather up the votes, we tally them, and we have your 3 finalists. Now, if you have 5 or fewer applicants, then the first round can be each of you must cast 3 votes. Does that make sense? In which case there would be a total of 18 votes cast. So, Mayor, I see the quizzical look on your face, Mayor. If you have 6 applicants and above, I'm saying you should each have 4 votes that you must cast in the first round. If it's 5 or fewer, you only have 3 votes. You don't need so many votes if you have fewer applicants.
That's what I'm thinking about is I think that's getting maybe a little overcomplicated. I would say that, we do interviews, and if there's 5 applicants or 7 applicants, regardless, we list the 1 through 7, and whoever gets the most votes gets in. As simple as that.
Mayor, I get it, but what I want to do is I want to give you a procedure. And I want you and the public to know what the procedure is going to be so we don't get accused of making up the rules as we go along, like we sometimes do. And I think it helps. I know it's confusing, but I think it helps because if you only have 3 applicants, let's say, then why would you have 4 votes? You literally would have more votes than you would have applicants. Whereas if you have 7 or 8 applicants, then you want more votes. You don't want to be limited to only 3. You want to make sure that you have enough people that are finalists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's do this. I'm sure that council is giving a little.
Let's finish this process that he laid out, because he hasn't even finished the process
Right.
that he's going to lay out.
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, thank you. And then the next round, you would have 3 finalists, no matter how many applicants you have. Hopefully it'll be more than 3, but you have 3 finalists, and then council will have the final vote. You will then have round 2 of the voting, and in that final round, you will each cast 2 votes. Okay? 2 votes each, and hopefully that will be a total of 12, and hopefully you will have a clear top vote getter from amongst the 3 finalists. And that person will be the new city council person. Okay? And so here's the one thing I want to say, and that is in the event of a tie. In the first round of voting, if you have a tie at number 1, that would be number 1 and number 2. If you have a tie at number 2, those would be number 2 and number 3. Does that make sense? In other words, you fill them up. But if you have a tie at the bottom, that last number that you're trying to advance, then we may have to have 4 finalists rather than 3.
That's pretty unlikely, though. I mean,
you're right. I agree. But I just want to say, because could be a tie at any one of those positions. Now, in the final round of voting, if you have a tie at number 1, and all of this is even numbers. There are 6 of you, so no matter what, it's all even numbers. So if you have a tie at number 1 in the final vote, then I propose that we have 1 more vote. So in other words, you have 3 finalists, and you have a tie at 1 and 2, okay, or both tied for 1. So you then would have number 3 drop off, and council would then cast 1 vote each for who you want to see fill that council position, and hopefully you have a top vote getter, okay? And if you don't, then we have a tie, because we would have had, the process of elimination, and then you have a tie at the number 1 position. And in that event, and I know this isn't very parliamentary of me, but I think literally, in the event that you have a tie after all these rounds of voting, exactly, Councilman Goodall, I see you. We have a silver dollar, and the mayor says, okay, finalist 1 is heads, finalist 2 is tails, and you call it, we'll have the camera on you, Mayor, you flip it, and the coin tells us who the new council person is. Again, not very scientific, not very parliamentary, but there's going to be 6 of you. If it's a 3-3 tie, there's no way to break that tie.
Right.
Yeah, but it is effective, though.
Okay.
it's effective.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to call on Audra here. Audra, what are your thoughts about this process? And is this the process that has been used in the past?
Process?
Mayor, it is the process that we've used in the past with respect to taking letters of interest and then conducting the interviews. I don't recall exactly the voting process, but I think it's important to have a process that everyone understands what's in, so that it's fair and everyone's all on the same page and there's no accusations based.
Okay, just wanted to check and see what your thoughts were. Okay, let's go and get some thoughts from council. Mr. Goodall.
like it. It lays out a process that everybody can see we're gonna follow, and we'll just get through this and get it done. It works for me.
Ms. Grego?
I have a suggestion, and I don't know if this is doable or not. But on the first round, just do whoever gets the 4 or the 7 gets the best result. They're in the final. When we cast the last vote for the elimination on the second round, what if we weight that? Say, okay, council, your first choice will be 10 points, your second choice will be 5 points. If it's weighted like that, then we wouldn't have to flip a coin. The odds of that being a tie would be less, right, Flip?
Well, we're talking about the coin flip in the final round.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Okay,
that's.
so, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt Councilman Griego. You can't weight your vote because in that final round, you're all only going to have, you have a tie, and so you're taking that final vote, and so if we said, okay, all your votes are going to count 10 points, then you still have a tie.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It's probably unlikely that would happen, but seems
I
like.
agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with the process.
Ms. Ogletree? Darren Ogletree?
She's left the building.
Okay. Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, I like the process. I think it gives a chance to create a small pool and then eliminate from that pool. I think that has the appearance of fairness, and because the process was established first, I think that'll give people confidence in it. And I think much more serious decisions have been made by the toss of a coin in politics. So if in the unlikely event we get to there, I'm comfortable with that as well.
Okay. Mr. Shu?
Yeah, I've been on 3 of these enforcement councils, so it worked fine on all 3 of them. I think it's the best way to go.
Okay. All right, then let's move forward with the process, I guess, sounds like. So let's get it laid out. The big question is, I got a couple of questions actually. The interviewed person, are they going to have to be, where's that interview going to take place? Is it going to be in person here in front of me? Or are they going to be online like this?
I said online like this, man. Online like this.
The other thing that had been brought up, and I don't know if this is even doable, but I'm going to throw it out there. If, let's say that we could use, let's say, Sebastiani Gym, where we could have that city council meeting there, where we could all be spread out and have an interview person, an interview there. But that's a long shot, I know, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Okay.
Okay, all right. All right, let's, any other questions on that particular part of?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor. Hi, this is Councilman Ogletree. I got cut off, so I missed a lot of that. I just had one question. When is the deadline? The 45-day deadline, and I'm sorry if you already covered that.
No, Councilman Ogletree, the 45-day deadline, according to my calculations, will be July 3rd. So that,
okay,
from May 19th, the day that Councilman Matei's resignation was effective, 45 days out is July 3rd. So June 16th, we'd be well within time.
Okay.
So what we do is we will require any applications to be in on June 11th, correct, Les?
That is correct, Mayor, yes.
And
so
then
they can go to you in your packet on June 12th.
Okay.
Yes, the deadline is June 11th.
Okay, that way everybody's understanding of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And then do we complete the vote on June 16th, or is there a second vote after there are finalists?
No, you'll do it all on June 16th. You will have the interviews and do the voting on June 16th, ma'am.
Until we get the top vote getter that evening.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you missed my scintillating presentation. I'd be happy.
I am too. Really regretting that.
Was even a coin toss involved.
So I'd be happy to call you tomorrow, Councilwoman Ogletree, and try to
That's okay.
okay. It worked really well when we did the Michelle Miles filling that position. And it worked really well. I'm muting myself now.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about the position of liaison to the South Central Council of Governments. Just to let council know, whoever, if anybody in council wants to sit on that board, that I think they meet every other month. They 1 month it's here, 1 month it's in Walsenburg, and it usually takes half a day or 3/4 of the day. So whoever decides they want to get on that or be considered for it at our next meeting, make sure that you know that what you're getting yourself into.
I think Aaron Williamson showed interest in that. I think he'd be a good fit.
This
is Councilman Ogletree. I've also expressed interest. I've talked with Walter Bolden about it a little bit. And when do we need to announce our interest by the meeting next week?
It would be at the meeting next week.
Okay.
The only other thing that we could do, and I'm not sure if we even want to do this, is wait till we get our new council person on, but I think we ought to pick from what we have now.
You're not going to suggest a coin flip, are you?
No, I just throwing that out there. Okay, so anyway, like I say, so we have two people that have interest, Ms. Ogletree as well as Mr. Williamson. Okay. Okay, we also have a liaison on the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. That is something that doesn't have to be filled immediately, but if someone on council wants to be considered, bring it forward at the next meeting, or if you want to say that you're interested now, and then give that consideration next meeting.
I think that might be a good one for when we see who comes on for the next city council person, that they could step right into that if they would be a good fit.
Okay. Okay, we can do that. We can, like I said, that one's not as important at the South Central Council of Governments. Okay. So we will go ahead and wait on that one. Okay, let's go on to item 3, the City of Trinidad COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Program update. Cheryl, are you on?
Wally's going to take the business side of this, and then we'll go to the residential assistance. So Wally?
Yes, I am here. So I sent you all 2 different documents pertaining to this program. One was just a quick little line summary that I wrote up of how the actual allocation of these funds went. So I'll just kind of go through that real quick. 100, and specifically as Mike John mentioned, for the business segment of this relief program. So we had 152 businesses that applied. 132 of those businesses were approved. The reason that the 20 were not was because they did not have a business license filed with the City of Trinidad, which was part of our stipulations to receive this funding. Most of those businesses did not have a business license because they weren't actually in Trinidad. They were in the county or someplace like that, and or in other towns near. Then there were a few that just didn't have business licenses because the type of business they run does not allow or permit them, such as we had 2 people that applied that had Airbnb businesses that they were looking for assistance for. every business that did apply received between $500 and $1,500 in this first round of COVID-19 relief funds. 1,500 was what we had designated as the maximum amount, and 500 was something we had originally talked about as the minimum amount, but we didn't really want to set a minimum. But then as we were allocating these funds, we really did just want to make sure that we were offering support to all the businesses that we could, and we thought that there might be some people that would be offended receiving less than that. Most of these businesses, I'll preface this by saying I sent out a survey following the first round of payments, asking all the businesses how they felt this program was, what the current status of their business was, and of those businesses that were surveyed, nearly almost all of them said that they needed additional help this month, and about half of those said that they thought they would need additional help next month as well. In this first round of funding, the city distributed $109,500 of the $300,000 allocated into this program. $60,900 of that money was in utility credits, and $48,600 was in rental assistance checks. If we were to distribute these programs for 3 months, as we had initially planned to be able to do, we would exceed our budget by $28,500 if we gave all those people 3 payments again. But I will say that some of these businesses have responded saying that they don't need additional help. And then we did want to say that kind of our one disqualifying factor for getting the third round of payments at this point would be people that applied after the April 10th deadline that we had put in the original application. We have been assisting people that applied after April 10th, but we did say that there would be a priority to those who applied before then. And that just seems like the easiest way to make it so that we don't spend over our $300,000. Because if we did disclude those people, then that would put us just a little bit over that. And then with those people, the 6 businesses that said they did not need additional help, that would put us under the $300,000. That being said, I am not opposed to us allocating an additional $30,000 roughly into this program so that we can continue to support those businesses. But that's up to you all, and I totally understand that that is not within our budgetary constraints at this time. We are still receiving applications. I received one last week. I received one yesterday morning. And I'm of the philosophy that I want to help as many of these businesses as we can, even if we are receiving these applications late. So yeah, just I wanted to give that basic little summary. If we continue lending to all of these businesses that we have so far, minus these ones that our final allocation of funds will land at $295,100, which is just under $5,000 under the $300,000 allocated. So we felt that that was pretty close to nailing how much we wanted to distribute to our businesses. So that's just a basic summary of what we have done so far. I will add that this was difficult. It wasn't an easy task to do, mainly because, we had to collect W-9s for all of these businesses. We had to find out where to get these payments to. It just was a big process to do this for nearly 150 businesses in town. The second document that I gave to you all is the response to the survey that we sent to all those businesses. So it includes all the businesses that received help, what the current status of their business is, if their business has adapted in any way to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. We also asked them if they had applied for PPP loans through the SBDC. If you look through that document, you can see that 31% of these 109 of these businesses did fill out this survey. So out of the 109 that filled it out, 31% did apply for PPP. 36.7% said that they were not interested in applying for any sort of loan. And then there were some other programs that they also could have applied for as well. We did ask why some of these businesses did not apply, and the majority of those that did not apply indicated that they found that their business was not applicable for this PPP loan fund. And then we also saw that of the businesses that did apply, 33.9% were able to get funding through the program. We asked businesses if they felt that the program was helpful to them. 43% said that the relief I received through this program was essential for us to keep our business operating. 27.5% said the relief they received was helpful, but they're still not sure if their business will be able to get through this. 14.7% said that they appreciated the effort, but the relief they received was not enough to make a significant impact. And then all the rest below that were kind of comments that people had left, or people saying that the program is not helpful. So, considering that over 40% said that it was essential for them keeping their doors open, and 70% said that that it was a big help for them, I feel like it was a very good thing that we did do this program, and I'm glad that we were able to help these businesses. The next one pertains to the conversation we had earlier in this meeting. Would you be interested in applying for a low interest business loan, 0 to 2% interest rate through a nonprofit lender? Nearly 16% said yes. 44% said no, and then 39.8% said maybe they'd like more information. So I do think that kind of indicates that around 50 business number that we had put earlier of the businesses that could apply for the revolving loan fund will land us pretty close to about the amount of businesses that would actually be interested in receiving that type of fund. We also asked businesses, if they had filled out the 2020 census information. That was really just to try and encourage them to do that, because that will be have a big impact on how we are allocated funds in the future, and also how different investors look at Trinidad as a possible community to invest in. And as you can see, most of them had done their census information. About 10% had not filled it out yet. And then the last question was asking whether these businesses felt that they needed additional support through this program. A very small amount, it doesn't even have the percentage amount in there, said no, they do not need additional support. 47.2% said that they will need help this month, but they're not sure about next month. And 50% said that they thought they would need help both this month and next month. Additionally, there was one or two questions I skipped over in there that just had a lot of ideas on what business owners felt that the city could be doing to further help them. I will say that I think the majority of them said that we were doing a good job and they didn't have any significant suggestions, but there were a few ideas in there that we might want to think about. I think that basically sums up this program. I am happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Okay, before we do that, I guess Cheryl's going to have some information too, you said?
Cheryl has the residential information there, and there's a memo in your drive. Basically, we received 198 applicants for the residential utility and or rental assistance. 140 applicants each received $250 credit toward their utility account, totaling $35,000, and 12 applicants received a direct payment of $250 in rental assistance. There were approximately 24 applications still pending due to incompleteness, and we've been trying to get a hold of and to go through the payment process. And then there was 22 that were deemed ineligible. They didn't really weren't affected by COVID. They had assistance already, and they didn't lose their jobs or we're not affected by the COVID. And so, with that being said, we've allocated approximately $38,000, and we hope to do it for, hoping a few are okay, and we do it for 3 rounds, same as the business. So, I don't know if Cheryl has anything to add to that.
Cheryl, do you have any additional information?
I don't. I believe we'll be safe doing 2 rounds of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we'll be able to get to the 3rd. If we do, it would probably be about $75 to $100 per account.
Okay. Okay, before I turn it over to council, I want to make a couple of comments that I wrote down here. I had a little concern in a couple of things, is that there were this is on the business side, that I think there were 1 or 2 businesses that didn't even try to stay open during this COVID-19, which to me, did they even try to help the community or help themselves? They were just waiting for some money to help them, maybe for their rental assistance. So I think that was an issue that I had. And I had one that I saw in that entire list. I even questioned if they were even ever open. Because I would go by the business, I never saw anybody open or anybody parked in front of the business. So I questioned as to why they even applied. And of course, Wally, you didn't know that because you were just going by the applications. The other thing that I was thinking about is, I think maybe, like I mentioned earlier, we don't know if there is a second wave of this coronavirus coming around. Would council want to consider holding on to that 3rd round money in case something does come around? I don't know if that's something you want to consider. We would have to wait until fall, or unless it happens earlier. There was also mentioned in there that there were some people that received PPP funds that questioned if the money that they received that we gave them was going to hurt them. And Wally, you might want to expand on that here shortly, or why don't you go ahead and expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm going to address 2 of those comments. As far as your first question about assisting businesses that closed down and were not operating during this, I definitely understand the concern. I think that and I believe the rest of the people on this committee were looking at it through the lens of some of these businesses, had they been trying to operate during the time, may have had a higher overhead cost that would have caused them not to be able to open back up in the future, whereas having them closed down during this time when they knew they wouldn't be receiving any revenue might make it so that they would be able to come out of this better in the end. So that's just my one comment on that. And we may have made a mistake there, or been naive in that belief, but at the same time, we just had the goal of trying to make sure as few businesses as possible closed because of this as we could. As for your question about the PPP loans, yes, I did put a note in there. In the long run, okay, so the PPP loans, for those of you that aren't familiar, businesses could apply for those. It would come in the form of a loan that you could use for your payroll, your rent, your mortgage, and your utilities. The thing is, that loan is possible to be forgiven by the SBDC if you can provide documentation that that loan money was spent on those items. So for example, us giving the utility credits, those businesses will no longer be able to prove in any way that they spent that PPP money on their utilities. So basically, it wouldn't mean that the business owner would be short on any money they would be receiving because we would be covering that cost. But at the same time, if we weren't paying their utilities, the PPP money was paying their utilities, then they would be reimbursed for that money, but it wouldn't come from the city. So it basically would mean that the funds to help support these businesses would be coming from the federal government rather than our money that we have available. So I do think that there are some benefits to the city of Trinidad to have these PPP recipients pay for their utilities, their rent through the PPP money that they got, and then get paid back by the federal government. That being said, I just don't know 100% for sure that the federal government will follow through with forgiving all those loans. I don't know how strict they are going to be with the documentation that they need in order to forgive those loans. And so, yeah, it's something that I want to be careful with. I don't really want to automatically turn down businesses for additional funding because they got PPP loans, and then have 2 months later they find out that the government isn't going to forgive them for those loans, and they're having to pay back a lot of money that they were not expecting to have to pay back.
Okay.
So that would be my concern with that, but at the same, yeah. So
Okay.
that's kind of the conflict of it.
Okay, the other question that I'd like you to explain further to council as we move forward here is those giving greater consideration to some of those applicants before the 4/10 deadline and those afterwards. Can you kind of run through that again for council?
Yeah, we had put it out there that priority would be given to those who applied before April 10th. We didn't want to put that as a deadline because we did recognize that some businesses wouldn't be able to get it to us by then. And for us, this wasn't a program where it's like, hey, we'll give you money if you want it. It was, hey, if you're struggling and you don't think your business is going to get through this time, the City of Trinidad is here to offer support for you. So we didn't want to, considering that we put this out there on April 3rd, it just seemed like it might be an issue to only give people 7 days to apply for this program. They may not be aware of it, etc. But we did clearly put in the application process for anyone who applied for this program that priority would be given to those who applied before April 10th. And so had we not gone over the $300,000 budget and allocating to all the businesses that applied, I'd say if they applied after April 10th, let's support them in any way we can. But as we are finding that if we do that, we'll be $30,000 over our budget, that just seems like the easiest way to disqualify people for that third amount and keep us within the $300,000 that we allocated to this program.
Okay. And you also mentioned, maybe you covered that just briefly there, is that anybody that came in afterwards, that they would be only allowed for a single round, is that correct?
I have not told anyone that they're only available for one single round yet.
I thought that was in the information that you sent to us. Maybe I misread that.
It would disqualify them for a third round.
Oh, third round, excuse me, you're right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and at this point, we actually, for the most part, sent out all the payments for the second round of this past week to make sure that we got it to these people before their rent and utilities were due at the beginning of next month.
Okay, let's go ahead and get some thoughts from council. Mr. Goodall.
So, roughly, we put out under 150,000 on the first go round of payments, correct, Mike?
Correct, with business and residential.
And out of that 500,000, we allocated how much between residential and businesses did we allocate for payments? Just straight 300,000?
Actually 400,000. We had 300,000 for business relief and 100,000 for residential.
All right. So then we're running pretty close to what we had figured it was going to take for 3 rounds. I mean, we may be a little over on the business side, but not the residential side.
Correct. Well, depending on the residential side being, I think it was 38, that would put us over on the residential side if we did 3 rounds. But we're hoping that, back then we were hoping it'd be 3 months and we're over, but who knows? So,
Right.
we're doing what we can to help with what the council allotted, so, yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's working. We'll always have some people, I think, that try to cheat the system. I think we should do the like I said, second round's going out. That's great. With third round, we just have to adjust the amount of disbursement a little bit so that we come out on budget instead of the amount we had given the first 2 rounds. I think it's a good thing to get these, and I think that would take us through June. And I think that optimistically, I think that we're going to see things on an upswing by then, and summer people rolling through and be well on our way to recovery. So I like the way the system works. I think City Council did a good job. Staff did even a better job getting the money out there. And great update. Thank you, Mike.
You're okay with just expending for all 3 rounds then?
I am, and
Okay.
the third round to stay on budget if we need to, just lower the amount a little bit across the board to get the payments out to everybody to help them.
Okay.
Okay, and so you do propose that we give it third round to everybody, including those that applied after the original deadline?
I definitely think we need to help, like you said, Wally, all the businesses we can. Some people, if they just didn't hear on time and they came in late, if we have to adjust the third round payments down a little bit to make it work for everybody, we should try to help everybody we can.
Okay, thank you.
Karen?
Well, I agree with Rusty. I think, I would like to spend the budgeted amount. But, I think we made it clear at the beginning of this process that this wasn't going to be a big budget item as far as how much money we're going to give the individual businesses. This was more or less whatever we could do to help these businesses. So as long as we stay in budget, I think we'll be fine with that. There's so many other programs that are coming in effect now. You have insurance companies that aren't sending premium notices. You're having, and some insurance companies are even giving businesses refunds. But I think it was meant just to be a little bit more than a goodwill gesture, but it was meant to assist in proportion to what the city could afford. So as long, I'm kind of iffy on the third go round. Maybe we should hold that and see what happens in the fall. I mean, this is a tourist community, and if tourism dollars don't come in this summer, we might have to give those tourist-related businesses a little push for the fall, because I know they depend on that money to make it through the rest of the year.
Well, the other thing too, Ms. Grego, is the Senate is working on the third round stimulus, so we don't know. It sounds like they're getting closer. What that'll be, we don't know. So by the time that third round comes around due, might have to make a decision at that point. So that's another consideration. Any other comments?
That brings a good point there, because individuals have gotten that stimulus check. So, we're not bearing the burden all by ourselves. We're trying to even it out with everything.
Correct. Okay, Ms. Ogletree. Did we lose her?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Williamson. Mr. Williamson?
Sorry, my mic was muted. I agree with Councilwoman Goodall and Councilwoman Grego. That makes that part easy. I was curious, and if I missed it in the email, I apologize. When are we finding out about the exemption that we've requested from the state?
We don't know. And some of that may be mute by the ruling that came down from the governor over the weekend. So, as far as like the restaurants are allowed to open. Camping is allowed to open right now. They just have to read the restrictions that apply.
Yeah, and restaurants will only be able to be open to 50% occupancy. So that will limit their revenue stream a little bit.
Okay.
Any other comments on the package that we're,
No, Mayor.
okay. Ms. Ogletree, are you back with us yet? Guess not. Mr. Shu? Mr. Shu?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rusty. I think we can work out the three. I've talked to a few businesses and they seem to be very happy with what we did. And like I say, we should keep on working to get these people back on their feet, and whatever we can do to help them, I think that's going to be good.
So, Wally, when would we make the decision on that third round? By what date do you anticipate?
Honestly, preferably as soon as possible, just so we can prepare ourselves to allocate that third fund out. But I could also communicate with some of these businesses more. Like I said, I don't necessarily think that we need to give it to every business who receives PPP funds if they think that they will be reimbursed. So if we wait a little bit, it can give me a little bit of time to communicate with those businesses and see what their thoughts are. But ideally, I'd like to vote on this at the council meeting so that we can get ready for disbursement date for July.
I personally, like I said, I don't mind the third round, but I think what we ought to do is we'll kind of wait to see if maybe for another 10 days to find out if the Senate is going to pass through that third stimulus and what that third stimulus might be. I think by the time our meeting comes around, we might be able to be in the position.
You're losing your sound.
Yeah, we can really understand you, unfortunately.
There's some background.
Yes, okay, so let me jump in. Councilwoman Ogletree wants to address you all, and she had her speaker unmuted. That was causing the sound.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ogletree.
You are muted now, Councilwoman.
Okay, am I on now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Wally, in your report you said there are 6 businesses that had notified you that they don't need additional help. Does the $30,000 overage include that?
Yes, it did, and then I subtracted it in a later one. Basically, what I showed you is we are over $30,000 if we gave to every business we gave to for 3 months. And then I subtracted some that was people that applied after the April 10th deadline, which put us down to, I believe, 5,000 over. And then we subtracted the 6, and that put us $5,000 under the budget. So that was included in there.
Okay, I like Rusty's idea of reducing it so that everybody gets some, but I also like the idea of waiting a little bit on the third round. I don't know that we have to decide tonight that there's a third round. We could decide that in a month, I'm thinking, when we have a better sense of how this summer is going to pan out for people.
I agree. And I do think that if we need to put out a third round, we have to be prepared to do it quickly. I will just note that over 50% of the businesses surveyed said that they thought they were going to need additional support next month. And so I would just like y'all to keep that in mind, that according to our business owners, they do think that they will need additional help next month.
All right.
Let's get that a simple comment on that part of it, starting with Mr. Goodall. Do you think that maybe we ought to, just in case a third stimulus or that other stimulus comes around, maybe wait another 10 or 15 days before we decide? You're
muted.
You're muted.
All right, here we go. I think that's fine, that if we went ahead and waited, and that way Wally would have time to go ahead and notify that we're gonna hold the third payment for a little longer. We should let the businesses know right away, but I'm okay with holding it for a little bit to see how things go.
Ms. Grego?
I agree.
Okay.
I do have one question in regards to that, if that is all right. If everything kind of balances out, if there isn't a big return of the in the fall, does that mean that we will not end up allocating a third payment at all? just because I think there might be an optics of us saying to our business community that we are going through this process, that we are giving out $300,000 to support our businesses, but then if we only end up giving out $200,000, there might be some perception that we did not follow through on what we promised to those businesses.
Well, on the flip side of that, you know, let's say that these people are able to go, you know, completely back into their business and it's not necessary. And I think somebody mentioned earlier that, you know, there are people who will just try to take advantage of monies that's available. So I think that that's something that we could, you know, probably play even by ear, because we do know that in the case that they can't get back into business completely and the business is going well, why would they need the extra money?
I'm of the feeling if we allocated this amount of money, we need to make these payments. I don't think we need to pull money back, say, okay, this is what we're allocating, we're going to help businesses. Just because things may be picking up by no means they're going to be recovered, and they can still use that assistance.
Okay.
So whether it's later or for July, whenever that payment's made, that payment needs to be guaranteed made.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree, what are your thoughts about that third round, about waiting? You're muted.
Someone's muting me. I like what Rusty just said. I think I think we do need to be true to what we said we were going to do. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to wait until things appear to be more needed rather than in the middle of the height of our season. But I really leave that to, I think it's just a judgment call.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Shu?
Well, I kind of agree that maybe we could wait a little bit. Then Wally said that we need to get this done as soon as possible. So we're kind of sitting between two rock and a hard spots. So I think they're definitely going to need the third, most of the businesses, and we should do the best we can to get them going.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like I said, you know, that third round, we're just going to wait, you know, another 15 days to see what happens, and that money, you know, we'll expend all that money at some point in time. And the other part is that that third round, it's the recommendation would be to reduce that down so we stay within budget. That's what I'm hearing, and so if you, Wally, take that into account. I wanted to say thank you. You also put out that survey. I think that was really good to hear back from these people what their thoughts were, and I read through all of them. I'm sure council did too, and it was good to hear that we are able to help several people. I mean, maybe not to the point that they actually probably need more money, but at least we help some. Okay, any other thoughts on the COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Program update? Now we'll move on to the next item.
I'd like to say just one thing. There are communities out there who wish they had money to assist businesses and people in their communities. We're very fortunate to have been able to assist the people in this community.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, let's go on to item 4, the Fox Theater lease. Les, you want to comment on that?
Actually, Mayor, if I may, and Les, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, buddy.
Back in March, we had scheduled to have the Fox Theater on the agenda on a work session, and we were going to take the entire work session to get everybody on board with what's happening with the Fox. And on the call, we have Dana is on the call, and Stephanie, and President Chipolletti, all there. I apologize for that. We could just let Dana give a brief kind of intro on the Fox Theater and what's been going on there, and then we can jump into that legal stuff.
I didn't hear who's going to jump in.
Dana.
Hello, Dana.
Hello, I'm supposed to talk about the theater, and the theater is supposed to bring you entertainment, but brevity is the thing today, and it's the Fox West Theater, and I have 2 minutes allotted to talk to you about it because we had planned in March to have a full session and to bring you into a real sense of participation with the theater, because it probably is one of the biggest assets that Trinidad has. And the more we learn about it, the more we find that it is such a huge asset. It was one of the buildings, one of the first theater buildings in America, and to some extent internationally, that was done by the Wright brothers, and they were very, very innovative and did some fantastic things which are still intact in the theater, and it has just the best acoustics imaginable. And so I think that people will be coming just to see the theater itself and how it was all developed. I got involved in 2015 when I came down to Trinidad and frankly, promptly fell in love with the place. And we divided up some responsibilities between Jay Chimino and the Betcher Foundation and me. And my job was to get an option on the theater building, which we started negotiating on in 2015 with the Sawaya family, and with especially Buzz Sawaya, who was extremely helpful. And by 2016, the option was signed, and then shortly thereafter, with the help of our staff member here, Stephanie Bakken, we applied for History Colorado and a $200,000 grant, which is the maximum of what they give, to assist us in purchasing the theater. And so closed on the theater in 2018, and in the meantime an advisory committee had been selected, and we were ready to apply for a nonprofit status also. I work for my company, which is called Urban Neighborhoods, but then we formed the Fox West Alliance, which was granted the nonprofit award, because we will be doing, and you all got kind of accustomed to this with Space to Create, the tax credits can be sold, which will help us to raise the money. And we don't really know yet exactly how much money it's going to take, but let's just say a lot. So it's one of the oldest and best theaters, and it's been compared a lot to Carnegie Hall in New York. It's very large. It seats 1,200 people. And from council, Rusty Goodall has been our really good friend, and Mike Valentine, of course, has been extremely helpful. And we have fellow Chris Smith, who's been in the town now for, I think, 4 years, that is taking care of the theater on a regular basis. Gregory Friesen from Colorado Springs was recommended to us by History Colorado as a fellow in the AIA and a very knowledgeable person about theaters. And then we also, and I'm about to introduce Chris Cipollatti to you, who is a professional fundraiser on our team. And Rusty, you came back, and I just said something really nice about you. So I don't like to have you go away when I'm talking about you. So at any rate, Chris Cipollatti, are you here someplace? And can you take on the responsibility of talking about the lease, which is coming before council for their first consideration this evening during the study session?
I am here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. And it's nice. Those of you who I've not met before, it's nice to meet you virtually. As Dana said, I've been brought in to help with fundraising for the rehabilitation of the Fox West Theater. You had in your packet, and unless and Mike, hopefully you're okay with me just jumping in and kind of directing this at this point.
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Chris.
Thanks. So, as Dana said, in 2018, the city bought the Fox West Theater with the assistance of a state historical fund grant, and started working with Urban Neighborhoods, Dana's company, around the rehabilitation of the theater. And to help with that, the Fox West Theater Alliance was created. It's a 501c3 nonprofit entity And the reason it was created is twofold. One, to help with fundraising so that private philanthropic dollars could be donated through individuals and through private foundations who would support grants to help with the rehabilitation of the theater. And then kind of to add on to that, once the theater is rehabilitated and renovated, rehabilitation is probably an awkward word to use, but renovated, then somebody needs to operate the theater, and the city's not in the business of operating an entertainment venue like a theater, and so the Fox West Theater Alliance is, the concept is that the Fox West Theater Alliance will then become the operator of the theater once it's renovated. So we've got two activities going on in conjunction with each other, and we need to formally document what that looks like. Right? And there's been some work done on a development agreement with Urban Neighborhoods and Dana around the redevelopment of the Fox West Theater. And there was discussion in the summer last year, and we thought that had moved forward, and apparently it never got presented to council. But we've all been moving forward with an understanding that Urban Neighborhoods is going to redevelop or to develop the theater and lead the renovation of the theater. And then to take advantage of the tax credits that Dana mentioned, we need a lease with the entity that will operate the theater. And really just to kind of formalize the entire relationship, we need that lease in place anyway. So what you have in front of you in your packet are a number of documents, right? And so I tried to do a one-page memo that you got that kind of outlined everything, and then some graphics in terms of reporting relationships and how everybody fits together, which then lays out the overall structure of the development agreement and lease itself. And because there are kind of three main parties involved, the city, Urban Neighborhoods, and Fox West Theater, and everything is being done collaboratively, we tried to combine everything into a single agreement rather than having a separate development agreement and then a separate lease, right? So that what this is trying to show is we've got relationships among all of the parties that are collaborative, and everybody's working together and trying to do what is best for the city, for the community, and bringing back to life a theater that, as Dana says, has an incredible history, incredible acoustics, and will be absolutely a splendid place for people to visit when they come to Trinidad once it's renovated. That gives you the groundwork. There's a lot in the development agreement and the lease agreement, and happy to walk through that with everybody as you'd like. As I put in the memo that accompanied this, we put this together in the last few weeks and wanting to get it to you so you actually have something to start working with. So there's probably some typos that you're going to catch. There's some awkward sentences, some concepts that need to be built out a little bit, but this gives you kind of the basic outline and the kind of the guts of the process that we're looking at and the approach that we're looking at taking. So I'm happy to delve into anything in particular on any specific provision, or just talk at a higher level about the overall structure that we put together.
You know, what I'd like to do is with this, let's take this in two parts. You have the development agreement and then you have the lease. So let's talk first about the development agreement, and we'll start with council. Mr. Goodall, any questions on the development agreement itself?
I don't have any questions. As always, I'll defer to the experts, the attorneys, for opinion on this for sure.
Okay, Ms. Grego? Ms. Grego? Do you have any questions on the development agreement itself?
Old dog, new tricks, guys, old dog, new tricks. But anyway, I didn't realize there were two, development and lease, they're all in one, but I noticed that on the termination of the agreement, the only way the city can get out of this is if urban neighborhoods and the Fox West Alliance, either one of those are filed for bankruptcy. Is that correct?
Chris, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's all I have. Is that?
Well, if I could, and I want to say the mayor, at first we were talking, I believe, about the development agreement, but I do want to say that the rehabilitation or the redevelopment it is phrased in the agreement would be for the first 10 years. The prior language was that we had to have the building redeveloped or refurbished within 10 years. And this provides for, unless there are some, unforeseen circumstances, and making it so that it would otherwise be impossible to fulfill that obligation. However, it is everyone's hope, intent, and desire to have the building rehabilitated within 10 years. I feel like I'm not answering your question, Councilwoman Green.
That's okay.
Okay,
there are. Let me jump in on that, Les, if you don't mind. There are several ways that that this could be terminated. Right? If one of the parties is not performing their obligations under the agreement, then it could be terminated for that. The development component effectively ends once a certificate of occupancy is issued for the building, right? So that piece of this document ends at that point. The lease component, which is the second piece, is structured right now at 25 years, and then it has renewals every 5 years after that. So at every 5-year increment, it could be terminated by either party.
Okay.
And if, for example, the Fox West Theater Alliance is not doing what it's supposed to do, not providing insurance for the building, not maintaining the Fox West Theater, then the city has the ability to terminate the agreement for cause along those lines. So there's, assuming that the relationship is going well, there's no reason to terminate, right? But if the relationship isn't going well, there are breaches of the agreement that could be happening as a result of that, and so there could be earlier termination.
Okay. I didn't have it clear in my mind.
and previously, if I could jump in, it was 3 30-year terms, automatic renewal periods at the end of each 30-year term. Anyway, that has been changed. And Chris, one thing I did want to say, and that is, under term, when the lease begins, you have that the lease would begin in 2020 for 25 years. And I think that is contemplated that would probably be about 2030 for 25 years, right? Isn't it contemplated that the lease would begin after the redevelopment occurs?
No, the lease has to be while the redevelopment is occurring.
Okay.
In part to take advantage of the tax credits, right?
No, it makes sense. I understand.
So assuming that it takes 10 years to redevelop the Fox West Theater, then this is effectively a 15-year operating lease. And then it renews for 5-year periods unless either party terminates it.
Okay. I know, Chris, you mentioned that there's typos and things in here, but there's a big one on page 8 of the agreement, of the lease agreement. Under paragraph mark 10, you have the lease premises shall be sublet instead of shall not. Is it supposed to be shall not, right? Because then you say, nor shall this lease be assigned.
It should say not.
Okay. Okay, that kind of scared me there, Chris.
Okay, staying with the development agreement, anything else, Ms. Grego?
One more, just a comment. I've gone to Santa Fe several times and sat there and salivated over, is it the lens theater down there.
Yes.
And that theater is almost an identical twin to our Fox, only our facade is so much more authentic than theirs is. But I see what the lens has done for Santa Fe, and I just hope I live long enough to see maybe 10 more years. I know I won't be here for the end of the first 25, but I think you're on the right path, Mrs. Crawford. Thank you.
Ms. Ogletree?
We'll do it just as fast as we can, because I'm right there with you about the demise part.
Ms. Ogletree, do you have any questions on the development agreement? You got to unmute.
I like this better than what we were seeing before for sure, and I think it looks like we're working as equal partners, and I look forward to that partnership. Although this isn't a partnership.
Okay,
working together, let me just say that.
Okay, Mr. Williamson.
I have no questions. I'm just grateful that there's people taking interest and effort in this, and it looks like it's going to be a really good thing for Trinidad. So thank you, everyone.
Mr. Shu.
I don't have any comment. I would like to talk with Les one of these days on a few of these things, but I can wait till later on that.
And Mayor, if I could just jump in real fast, and that is, you may want to have an executive session with me so that we can talk about, this or anything else in a confidential session. I don't, there are no, skeletons in closets to discuss, but you may want to discuss this with me in confidence and not simply in an open meeting at some point in time. But I just wanted to suggest that after what Councilman Chu said. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a few questions. I'm going to lump these first two together. The development agreement, it talks about, I was wondering our responsibility to help raising funds. And I don't think that, because it does state that in the development agreement. And I'm just kind of wondering, what responsibility do we have as far as actually going out and raising funds, other than, I know we're going to come out, I think you're asking for matching funds, which I've got a different thought there that I'm going to bring to council at some point in time. So that's question.
Well, I can answer part of it, Mr. Mayor. A lot of the foundations and like History Colorado, the application must come from the municipality. So that's, I suspect, what was meant in developing the language, and it may not be properly, wordsmithed, but we hope that someday that everybody will be in really good financial shape, and that the city will want to in some way participate. But I don't see it as having any responsibility, except that when we apply, for example, as we have currently an application into History Colorado for another $200,000, and actually Mike worked with us on that because he was the one that had to sign the application.
Okay, so according to this, that we may have to provide some matching funds from the city of Trinidad, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the way it's structured, this, just to provide a little more context, as Dana said, there are certain grants that require that a public entity submit those grants, right? So History Colorado, for example, some of the grants you all approved, we have applied for a Saving America's Treasures grant. That had to come through the city. It couldn't come through the nonprofit.
Right.
And so that's part of the cooperation on the fundraising side of things. Nobody from the city is expected to go out and be searching for those opportunities and working the fundraising program that way. Some of those grants also require that the owner of the property provide some level of matching funds. And so that's part of that participation. And we're committed to making sure that whenever we aren't going to ask or force the city to apply for a grant where we can't get the match, right? And we're also committed to giving you plenty of time before we apply for a grant to make sure that you can think about and determine whether you can come up with the matching funds, if the city has to come up with matching funds, and where those might come from. So you'll see in here, I believe we said that we would give at least 21 days notice before a grant application is due, so that council has sufficient time to really look at the application and what the request is from the city.
Okay, one of the things that I'm going to do, because I've been on council now for the last 4.5 years, is there's always matching funds available. So I'm going to bring forward possibly to council, just to let you know that maybe at some point in time that we, maybe from our marijuana funds, have a set aside for in the case that we do need some matching funds, that it will be made, it'll be there available. So that'll be a consideration for council at some point in time. The next question I have, it says, of course, according to the agreement, that the Alliance and I guess Dana's fee is derived from the grants. Now, the question I have there is, should we, her fee, should that be the city portion of that, should that be part of her fee? Should it come from some of the city side or just from the grant that they received?
Mayor, you were breaking up a bit.
Okay.
But I don't believe it's contemplated that comes from the city side.
Okay.
I think that, and Chris, you jump in here, but I believe that would be basically assessed or paid as the grant fund. The grant funds are coming in. I should say the fundraising or the grant funds, and as we're raising revenue. There's not, as I understand it, a direct city obligation to compensate Ms. Crawford for her efforts under this agreement.
Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct.
Okay.
So the fees that all of us are getting will come out of the money that is raised for the project, right? So that'll be built into the project budget.
Okay.
So nobody will come to the city with matching grant to pay it.
Okay. Next question I have, under costs, it had that the developer may have to pay for some development costs before the funds have been raised, and of course that's where the city may have to come in to help up front. Now, is there any type of guarantee that once you get those funds, that the city will be reimbursed back for putting forward those funds up front?
Yeah, and that's why that's stated in the agreement, right? That's the guarantee is in the agreement. And just to give you an example of the types of funds those might be, recently, you probably all know the stage had some structural issues, and when we were talking about actually doing a September season in the theater, there was concern about putting people on the stage and it being able to support them. And so we needed $7,500 to have a structural engineer come in and take a look at and make recommendations and do drawings about how to get the stage secured so that people could be safely be on it. So it's that type of, there may be an issue where there's a need for some capital relatively short term to be able to move forward with a project, and we're in the process of raising funds, but we don't quite have everything raised yet. So that's just we may come to the city and ask for an advance. These will be small requests, but we're not going to come in and say, hey, we need $1 million for this. Will you advance it and then let us go out and raise it? So that's the concept there, is these smaller costs that might come up.
And that's why I brought forward that I'm going to make a recommendation to council, maybe to get to set aside some funds for the event that this does come up, so it doesn't slow down the process, because as we know, once this gets moving, that we want to be able to take action on it as soon as possible. Now, Les, this question is for you. In that particular case, those decisions on those, this is an application or whatever it may come to be, does council, will those have to come to council each time, or because Mike has the authority to expend up to a certain dollar amount, or because of this particular development agreement, can it be done administratively? Or does it have to go to council?
Mayor, I would say administrative.
Okay.
Of course, if it exceeds the dollar amount, you would have to have council's approval. But I do think that, like, nuts and bolts decisions, and that's a bad choice of words, but decisions that need to be made in the day-to-day operation of that, if they need, approval from the city, then Mike can give that. But any dollar figure up to his, dollar authority, what is that now, $50,000, to be done by Mike, with, I'm sure, notifying you, if that needs to be done. I mean, letting you know that there was going to be an expenditure.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Okay, let's go on now to the actual lease. Mr. Goodall, did you have any questions concerning the lease? Mr. Goodall?
I have no questions.
Ms. Grego?
I jumped the gun, so I asked my question.
Yeah, you did.
But I'm sorry, but I need to ask Mrs. Crawford and Chris and maybe even Stephanie, as a public official, I'm concerned about what kind of funds are going to be available for nonprofits.
What's wrong with you?
I'm sorry. What do you think are chances of getting funds for this? Has COVID changed the nonprofit world as far as grants being given, or given kind of? And it's just for me personally, but I'm concerned about because a city like Trinidad depends on grants quite a bit.
Well, hopefully there'll be a lot more grants. My observation about the coronavirus shutdown, lockout, is that the people that are selectively interested in certain subjects, like there's certain people that are just extremely interested in theaters. There are other people, it turns out, that are very interested in the work of the Wright brothers. I think that as we work on marketing plans for Trinidad, there are going to be more people that come to Trinidad, and if you can get them to Trinidad and drive them around just a little bit and take them through the theater, they are in love. And so they're very much more willing to give when they're in love. So I'm not depressed about the virus, but I do think overall that you are correct, and that it's going to cause all of us to have to work harder. But what's new?
Hey Chris, I was going to ask you to step in on this. What are your feelings about the marketing for funds? Or for your fundraising portion of it, how do you feel about that question?
I think he's asking you, Chris.
Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
COVID-19 has had an impact, kind of a short-term impact on giving, right? A lot of people have taken the resources that they would put into arts and culture projects and directed them to some of the community needs. Much of what you were talking about earlier in terms of what the city is doing and providing resources just to make sure citizens can live and can function. But what is likely happening right now is that those are, from a philanthropic standpoint, and particularly from a grant in the private sector side of things, those are likely short-term fixes, and people will go back to the causes that they believe in. And one of the things that, at least some of the anecdotal information that is coming out right now is that finding ways to bring people together in social gatherings is something that philanthropy is going to be looking at doing, and theaters are perfect places to bring people together in social gatherings, right? So part of what might happen with an overall design for the theater, in terms of how it's used, we may have to look at a little bit of social distancing, right, and kind of how you seat people, but there should be some opportunities from a fundraising perspective to be able to raise the capital that will be needed. It will take a little bit longer than we would like. It's already taken longer than we would like, right? We'd love somebody to come in and write the check right now. We don't have that person yet, and it will likely take a bit longer simply because we've got this recovery period that we're going through. That one of the benefits, though, is that we still have some planning that we need to do around what the overall renovation truly is, and then getting some solid cost estimates around that before we can truly step out and do a major fundraising program. So we've got some time to breathe right now to get that pulled together, and then really start stepping out. And I'm cautiously optimistic that at the time we're ready to step out and really do some of the major fundraising, that philanthropic giving will have loosened up again, and grants and individual donors who can write large checks will be feeling more comfortable about where they can go with a project like the Fox West.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree.
Excuse me, I'm just trying to follow the ball a little bit about the insurance situation. And I understand that during the rehabilitation part that the city covers property casualty and the developer covers liability insurance. When does the tenancy start?
When the certificate of occupancy is issued.
Okay, because in here it says the first day of a month, presumably in 2020. Is that expected to happen sometime?
Wait, no, when does the tenancy start? Is that
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, the lease, the tenancy starts on whatever day in 2020 this lease gets signed. And that's for two reasons. One, for the fundraising side of things, so that the entity, the Fox West Theater Alliance, that is doing the philanthropic fundraiser, can say, yes, we have a lease on the property. And then also for the historic tax credits, because the city can't issue them, or the city can't use a lease. The city doesn't have tax liability on the property, and so we have to have a lease, which creates the tax liability that we can use for the credits.
I understand that. So, but because the Fox West Alliance is going to be the tenant, will they be permitted inside the structure to do fundraising events or anything like that?
Yes, right. So that the insurance, the city and urban neighborhoods cover the insurance during redevelopment, and then the insurance gets turned over to the Fox West Theater Alliance. All insurance is responsibility of the Fox West Theater Alliance once the CO is issued.
Okay, and so while this period of tenancy before they've taken over the running of the place, it would cover them as well, the Fox West Theater Alliance, the liability assurance that the developer has.
Right.
Okay. All right, I understand that. Okay.
There's additional insureds on all of the policies, right? So every entity will be an additional insured, so that there's no question.
Okay, great, thank you.
We do, and I'm sorry for interrupting again, but we do want to make sure that the building is structurally sound and safe before public events or even private events are held there. And as Chris said earlier, the stage was unsafe, and but anyway, we are just wanting to make sure that everybody has a say in before things start happening there, even though it's important to have fundraisers, but we want to make it safe. That may not have contributed to the conversation at all, but I just want to make it clear that we don't want people in there until the building is safe.
I'd like to make it clear that I I have a lot to digest in all of this information, which I just got today. And, you know, this business of my company having to provide the insurance seems to be quite a responsibility that I'm not sure that we can bear. We had to bear an overrun where there was a big flood. Kids got into the theater, turned on the water ran for a long time, and I had to pay for getting the people to come in and be sure to get the theater prepared so we wouldn't get mold, which would have been kind of the end of the whole story anyway. And so when we ultimately ended up closing, I had to eat $200,000. And the mayor and I have discussed that, and you know, so I ate it. But I don't want to. I want to be careful about not being, you know, volunteered to provide insurance for 10 years.
Can I make a statement here? Kind of clarify something a little. The Alliance, the Fox Theater Alliance, or whoever's responsible, cannot insure that building right now because they have no insurable interest in that building. They don't own the building, the city of Trinidad does. So I believe when we added it onto our schedule, it's listed as a vacant building under renovation. So what will happen is when we get fundraising events in the theater, what we're going to have to do is purchase what they call a special events insurance policy. Dana's saying yes, so she understands that even if we try to get the organization to pay for the insurance, you legally can't because they don't own it.
So that probably puts some rest on you, correct, Dana?
Well,
that helps you out.
I certainly do a lot about getting special event licenses, and generally, you know, it also goes with the liquor license. If you have to get a liquor license for a special event, and somehow or another in America, we like to have something cheerful going on at the same time we're fundraising. So, you know, I mean, this thing that's before you tonight is, I'd say, 75% baked, but we have to work on the other 25%.
And I just wanted to add that when we do have insurance for the limited tour that we do, and that Urban is covering that cost for that limited insurance.
Okay. Mr. Williamson, do you have any questions?
No, I apologize about earlier that interruption, but I have no further questions.
Mr. Shu?
No, like I said, I'd like to talk to Les about a few things, but we can work on that later.
Just some clarification at some point, don't need it tonight. In the lease, it's talking about a base operating cost. Basically, it says, what is the base operating level? It's on page 9. So probably need to answer that at some point. It also talks on page 11, and this is a question I brought up even before, talks about that under maintenance and repair, it's in line 7, if there is an expenditure on a particular line, on a particular item in excess of $5,000, that I guess the city will have to pay for that. Is that correct, Mike?
But we need to negotiate that, Mayor. That was one of my questions, but being that it is a city building, it's sort of like Monument Lake type arrangement. So capital improvements and repairs requiring, and that 5,000 is in there for Fox West Theater Alliance in case, you know, something, they need to repair something or another. They come in for 5,000. Then I think we have to figure out what happened after that 5,000. Chris, if you need to jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, this is typical in lots of leases where the owner of the property, if something, I'll use like a commercial office building, the HVA system goes out, and it has to be replaced. And so the building owner usually is the one that comes in and bears the cost of that replacement, because it's just, if the tenant didn't do anything to it, it's just normal wear and tear, it's run its useful life, then the owner covers the cost of that. And that's really the concept here, right? If an air conditioning unit goes out, if a heating unit goes out because it's 25 years old, that's something that the city would step in and have some responsibility around. But things like the general maintenance of those systems on a seasonal basis is stuff that would be, the cost would be borne by the tenant.
Okay. Next question I have, in the case that there is a default from the Alliance and there are liens, who cures the liens?
I think we need to, and it's not in here, I'll apologize, but we need to put something in there that no liens can be taken against the property. Right, so that we won't even find ourselves in that situation, because, and we can, and you can post signs that make it clear that the city owns the building and no liens, and the city's not authorizing any liens against their building.
Okay. Well, a lot of times, there's material liens that come into play in buildings, so I'm well aware of that. The other thing, Les, that I'd like to see, in the covenant, it says about indemnification of the landlord, which says the city of Trinidad. I think that it should read that should be spelled out, which includes the elected officials and any staff. Would that be, or is it implied?
It's implied, Mayor. There would be no conceivable personal liability for individual council members or staff members as a result of anything stemming from this lease or contract.
Okay. That's all I have. Dana, do you have any final comments or questions or concerns?
No, I'm just looking forward to the time when we can have a real session like we had planned in March with the council, and we could, go to the theater, and I just can't congratulate you enough, because the more we learn about this theater, the more amazing it really is, and it just, we've studied a lot of theaters around the country, 14 particularly, and that have been completed, and it's just such a tremendous asset, and it brings a lot of tourism, and hopefully if the Alliance is successfully run, it can be profitable. I mean, it ain't easy, but it can be.
Okay. Chris, do you have any final comments or questions that you need answered?
Not at this point. I know, as we said, we've got some work to do on cleaning this up and getting it ready in final form, but it's just wonderful to have a chance to talk with everybody and really kind of put the whole structure out to begin the conversation so that we can truly start moving forward.
Okay, Mike, do you have any questions?
No, just one comment. It was brought up today in a different conversation, and I think it needs to be added. We're all good friends here, but we need to protect all of our interests and have maybe some kind of arbitration clause so that we don't. Apologies, but we don't have to call in all the lawyers.
Sounds good to me. Les, do you have any questions?
We're up for that.
Les,
I was going to say I object.
You all should know that Chris is a lawyer too.
Oh, I know.
And so, I guess, Mike, we have to learn to be a little bit more subtle.
Yeah, don't show your hand right now, but I have nothing else. I do want to thank Ms. Crawford and Chris and Stephanie. They were very patient in waiting for this. But I thank Chris especially. He's been, very, very nice in these negotiations and has been very indulgent of our position with respect to this. So that's all I have. Mayor and Council, thank you.
Okay, everybody, thank you. And we'll go on to line 5, which is our first quarter marijuana allocation.
Bye, Dana.
And take care, Dana, Stephanie, we'll see you, and Chris, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Okay, on first
I
quarter.
might retire.
Okay. Okay, first quarter allocation, is that Cheryl or Mike?
Mayor, I'll take it and defer to Cheryl when the hard questions come up. We finally got our first quarter allocation report, and as you can see by the memo, our marijuana revenues collected through March 31st totaled $853,476 dollars. That's a pretty good first quarter. We don't know what COVID will do the next quarter, but it sure seems like they're holding their ground. With that being said, we approved the allocation of $500,000 for our emergency relief and assistance, and then we've committed salaries out of that for our staff. The ADO demolitions and our safety program are all considered in there. So the remaining balance after all the committed allocations is $304,726 dollars. Now, Cheryl has noted that under normal circumstances, we put away 30% to the rainy day fund, which is going to be helpful, I believe, as we move forward, as we've talked with all the relief and all the help we're trying to assist and our recovery. But that 30% of the collected amount was $256,043. So that leaves about $48,683 that is in the first quarter. Now, we've had several discussions tonight about $45,000 and some change to a loan program, so I just put that out there for council's consideration, and I would defer to Cheryl if she has anything to add to that.
Cheryl, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that's pretty much, as long as we cover those costs that I listed in the first quarter, we'll be fine.
Okay. Okay, council, Mr. Goodall. You got to unmute.
No, I seen that. It's like it must be contagious, then it's just going around and around. So I am all for any, above putting our 30% away like always. Any extra money, revenue that we have come up right now, I think definitely needs to be set aside. The loan program is a prime example. Money can come up. Mr. Mayor, you brought up a program you're going to be talking to council about putting money into a fund. I think we need to put every extra penny we have aside to cover if there is another go round per se, and we need to help people with more assistance later. We need to keep every single extra penny and not spend it right now, so they can be used in the future to help us do this COVID and any other programs that may come up.
Okay. Ms. Grego?
You know me, I'm all for saving a buck here and there. I think we need to put that 30% away, but two projects that not concern me, they do concern me, is, okay, pretty soon we're going to have to come up with money for the commercial side of Space to Create, And we also have a half-built animal shelter, one of my favorite subjects. But, you know, we need to figure out what we're gonna do with those. I think saving every possible penny we can is absolutely the right thing to do. I'm assuming that, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen with the second and third quarter. I do know that the marijuana shops have not skipped a beat this, especially this last week. They've been really going strongly. But if you look at the third quarter, we have that payment on the fire truck that's due. And then I have a question for Cheryl on the youth club. 40,625. Is this our last payment, or can you explain that, Cheryl? On the second quarter I'm talking about.
Okay, so we were concerned with the $50,000 for the youth club being dispersed in the first quarter of 2020.
Okay.
When we dispersed the whole amount, it overruns the amount that's actually available to be allocated. So we had some extra money at the end of 2019.
I saw that.
And council allocated the $9,000 at the end of 2019. So that payment has been processed and remitted to the youth council. So the remaining amount is $40,000. That would make the $50,000 whole for fiscal year 2020, and then that is our final payment.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Cheryl,
I have no.
I just wanted, and on that, a comment to your question there, Ms. Grego. Does anybody know what the status of the youth club is? I know that they have been struggling. We might check to see, you know, if they're going to be solvent or if this is going to make them solvent or not. So I think that's something that we need to look at. So let's go on to Ms. Ogletree.
Is the $45,000 that we've been talking about for the revolving fund, could that come out of the 65% the second quarter marijuana allocation? Is that something, or does that need to come out now? Does that need to happen now? And I guess that's a question for Wally. Or
I think this is Mike. The Colorado lending source is ready immediately, so of course we'll have to work through the loan documents and everything that we have going and get council's approval at a regular meeting, and then it may come out of the first quarter, and it might have to. Can you hear me? Go ahead, Wally.
Yeah, sorry, I actually left my computer and I'm now on my cell phone, so I'm just making sure that you all can hear me. So, in regards to that question, from what Mike has told us, it's kind of a pay-as-you-go thing. So I don't think we would necessarily need to put that $50,000 forward immediately. However, we would have to commit that we are good for that $50,000.
Now, Mike, if I'm correct, let me just kind of say something that. So those funds, I didn't see, unless I missed it in the information, that $45,000 or 46, whatever it is, that it's coming out of. I didn't say the marijuana funds. I thought it was going to come out of the economic development funds. If there's money there, I don't know.
No, Mayor, it was intended to come out of the marijuana funds initially, and then hopefully as the revolving loan kicks in, then economic development would pick that up.
Hey, Cheryl, you just chatted in something that there have been money, some funds coming in from the marijuana funds. So with that $853,000, is that completely accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
What I chatted in are April's figures, which is the beginning of the second quarter.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Ogletree, do you have any other questions?
So what we're saying is that we didn't think we were going to have any money to put in the rainy day fund for the first quarter, but it looks like we actually are going to have at least that much that is available to put in. Is that correct? Is that what I'm reading properly?
That's correct.
Okay, and there's even an additional amount over that that we have that's not, I don't think it's quite 45,000, but it's something there. So I think, you know, I'm comfortable. We weren't going to put any in the rainy day fund because we thought we would not be able to. So I'm comfortable with, if we need to do the revolving loan program, using that, at least part of that, and not putting as much in the rainy day fund because it would not be that much more that we're taking out of what we've received.
So what'll happen is that, you know, according to what Cheryl said, our rainy day fund was at 2.6, and then with, if we took that and used that $45,000 or $46,000 that would come out of the marijuana funds, instead of putting the $256,000 into the rainy day fund, we're looking at about $212,000 or $210,000 that will go in the rainy day fund. Is that correct, Cheryl?
Actually, so just a sec. So if we put the entire $256,000 in the rainy day fund, that leaves the remainder of $48,683 to be allocated.
Okay.
There you
go. Good, good. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Mr. Williamson.
No comment right now.
Mr. Shu?
Yeah, I'm okay with what we were planning on doing there with the rainy day, and if we need to use that extra money for the revolving fund, it'll be fine.
Okay. And I'm with everybody else. So let's move forward with that rainy day fund, and I guess that 45 or 46 from that balance to come out of there. Any other questions or concerns? Mike, you have any other questions on the allocation?
No, Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go on to item 6, liquor licenses and COVID-19 temporary modification of premises. Mike.
Actually, Mayor, I'm going to defer to Audra on this. She actually had discussion with the Liquor Authority and Enforcement Division and has some guidelines. And if you notice, the governor opened up restaurants to 50%, and so the Liquor Enforcement Division set forth some parameters, and I'll let Audra kick in here.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So I drafted a memo to you very quickly on the 20th after I participated in the clerk training that Liquor Enforcement held. And obviously they're trying to be as accommodating as possible with the businesses so that these businesses survive. And first comment I want to say is that the health department, local health department, sent out an email this evening about them following suit with respect to the governor's order of allowing a 50% capacity, not to exceed 50 people indoors, and encouraging outdoor service. So that being said, I've also provided in the information that I sent out a list of the liquor license holders that would be eligible to apply for a temporary permit to extend outdoors. Some of them would be able to extend to their own private parking lot. Others would have to potentially look at either leasing an area that's private, or they could use city property with the city's permission, obviously, and to include parking spaces. Part of what liquor enforcement said was that the property had to be contiguous. But in the discussion that we had with the liquor enforcement division, contiguity was, we compared it to the flagpole annexation. They could use a sidewalk to gain contiguity. So one of the examples they provided is if there were a public parking lot that the city wanted to allow service to be had in by even multiple businesses, it could be sectioned off and the servers would have to walk down the sidewalk to the section of the parking lot for service to be provided. And they would share that sidewalk to get there, but then just serve into that area. So I think it's a matter of deciding if council is comfortable with doing that, how you want to handle them, if you want them to come in front of city council, if you want them to be done administratively. And keep in mind, liquor enforcement would be the second set of eyes on any application. And I think I've covered everything. If you have any questions for me, that it's the basics, kind of getting an idea on what city council is comfortable with doing. And also, I guess the second part of that is, in the past when we've had special event permits, some of the applicants have had to use our parking lots, and our city manager has signed a letter of permission allowing that use. That's another area where we would need to gauge city council's comfort level.
Audra, there's a little inconsistency with what the ruling is to some degree. According to what the governor said last week, in consideration of the restaurants, that they could use the sidewalk or parking lots or some of the street side for serving food. Now, according to the information, it says that they cannot consume alcohol on the sidewalks. So how do we handle that?
Where are you seeing that, Mayor?
Well, it was in there. It says cannot consume. It was in the order that came down on the alcohol use or the alcohol sales. It says cannot consume alcohol on sidewalks. It was on page 4, line C.
I apologize. Are you looking at the bulletin from liquor enforcement?
I think
It's in the packet, Audra, that you sent out. It's the enforcement division. It's on the second page, bottom of the page.
Right.
The inclusion of public thoroughfare is solely for the purpose of transporting alcohol beverage between licensed areas, and no sale or consumption will occur on or within the public thoroughfare.
Okay. So the distinction is the public thoroughfare has to be there has to be a barrier between the public thoroughfare and what's allowed for consumption. So say, for instance, you allow someone who has a sidewalk cafe to serve out on the sidewalk. They have to have a physical barrier that blocks that area from the thoroughfare.
okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Okay. As long as they still allow room for people to walk by. That's what it sounds like. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get some questions from council. Mr. Goodall?
No, I think this is a good idea. I don't agree with the health department if they're saying, recommending more outdoors than allowing restaurants to operate at 50% capacity. I think if they take precautions, it's not much different than what, or I should say that the marijuana stores have showed that taking precautions has been successful for them. We've had no cases at dispensaries, so I think if they can serve in a parking lot outside like they're saying they can, that's great. If they can't, we still, I think, need to get these restaurants opened up for 50% capacity, because that's what the governor said.
Okay. Ms. Grego?
You know, I think this is a great idea, the outdoor dining, but, you know, when you do a quick look through of all the restaurants in Trinidad, almost all of them are blocked in either by businesses on either side. There's not too many of them that have public parking that they own. That I think it's a noble gesture. I think we should try it, and I can't see. I would trust staff to do the initial application for the modification of premises license. I mean, by the time you get all of us together, it's time wasting. You're the experts.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree?
I agree with the comments that have already been stated.
Okay. Mr. Williamson?
I concur with Councilwoman Ogletree.
Okay. How about Mr. Shu?
Yeah, I'd say give them a shot at trying to get reopened and work with them the best we can. I think Karen had a good idea. The staff can take care of a lot of that.
Okay. Just one clarification. There might be some confusion because I'm not, there's also a variance into the state, and the variance stated 30%, and of course the governor's ruling is 50%. And just to let you know, I asked that question today, and for clarification, they said that, of course, the governor's ruling supersedes the variance amount of 30%, so that 50% stands. Les, will that have to be brought in front of council as for that change for it to be administrative, or what? What's your recommendation?
For what change, Mayor? I'm sorry.
Well, to allow for these liquor modifications.
I believe that it will. I mean, I think it's a state action. I don't think we can do anything to change this, but I think we may need to have this. It is part of our adopting our local, liquor regulations. It might be that it could just be in place of the state, but I think we may need it as an action item. Audra, what do you think? Would that be necessary?
Well, earlier today, I sent out the city's current outdoor dining program policy, and I think it essentially covers what needs to be covered, so that we don't have to take it in front of city council again. We'll note that if public property is used, the establishment has to provide the city with and it's a certificate of insurance running to the city, meaning the city is additionally insured for $1 million.
Okay.
So we also have some fees involved, and I don't know if council is willing to waive the fees temporarily for these temporary permits, or reduce them, or what your feeling is with respect to that.
So if we reduce those less, would that have to come in the form of a resolution?
I think that part of it would. There is normally a modification of premises fee, and I think that if you're willing to waive those fees, it would have to be something. I know I was wrong before. I said, but I do think you would have to, as an action item, agree to waive the fees for a modification of premises.
Okay, then let's get some thoughts from council, so that if we decide we want to bring that in front of council in the form of a resolution next week, If we do, what do you, starting with Mr. Goodall, would you like to leave the fees intact or a reduction to help these people out?
I'm all for, if we can afford to waive the fees, to do that, to help them out and help get them open.
Okay. Ms. Grego?
I agree. Reduce the fees, maybe just charge enough to cover administrative costs that the city's gonna have to incur with all the additional paperwork.
Ms. Ogletree?
I agree.
Okay, Mr. Williamson?
I agree. Anything we can do to help the.
Okay, Mr. Shu?
Yeah, I agree. I think we ought to just waiver all that. They've had a tough time in business. Let's get them back going.
And I'm in total agreement as well. So basically, we want to handle all this pretty much, other than the resolution, everything to be handled administratively. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the modification of premises? Okay. So go on to line 7, road to recovery. That is going to be something that, we can't, it's going to be difficult because one of the things I just wanted to start off with, and you guys can chime in one at a time, like I said. How many businesses are we going to lose over this? I know that Bowles is closing. I go by the movie theater. I don't know if they're closing because I saw all of their stuff come down over the weekend. So I don't know if we're losing that business. Are there going to be any other businesses? So what does recovery look like? What do we need to do to start looking at so economic development could start working on? That might have to be a complete other work session. But let's kind of get some initial thoughts. Mr. Goodall.
So I think we have an advantage that a lot of other communities doesn't have in the fact that we are going to get Fisher's Peak Park open. It is going to be brand new. It is going to be an attraction once everything comes, and that's really going to assist us in our recovery, both to helping businesses that do survive recover and bringing in new businesses. So, and I know we can't hang our hats on, well, the peak's open, so everything's going to be okay for us eventually. But I think that's a definite positive thing we have going for us. That's going to bring people in here. If we get any funding and they get it opened in any form, it's going to bring people back into our community pretty quick.
I agree. Okay. Ms. Grego.
I have dexterity problems on top of everything else. I went for a ride through Trinidad this weekend, and it surprised me because the rental markets are rental on residential. There's a couple of spec houses being built and some new subdivisions. So even though we're kind of going backwards as far as income and revenues within the city, I think basically, it's not as grim as I originally thought. The only thing that we can do as a city administration is to try and effectively run the city as well as we can. I think, with this program, with the money that we gave with the marijuana money, with the loan program that we're going to supposedly adopt, that's the only thing we can do, because if you don't, then if you put the city's finances and revenues in jeopardy, then there's nothing to fall back on. I mean, we need to try and do whatever we can within reason and whatever our pocketbook says we can. So I think Mike's done a fantastic job. I mean, when we went through those first quarter financials last meeting, I was amazed that I thought it was going to be a lot worse, to tell you the truth, but I think city staff needs to be commended. They're putting, they're being very conservative in their spending, and we need to do that.
Ms. Ogletree?
Well, I agree once again, Mr. Goodall and Mrs. Griego are getting all the good comments, but I do think we are really benefiting from the fact that being outdoors is a healthy thing. And for the foreseeable future, we need to stress as much as possible that Trinidad is a place that you can be outdoors and be safe and be well. And so any outdoor recreation kind of push, trails, building, biking, all of that stuff I think is going to help with the redevelopment of Trinidad just in general. And I kind of am thankful for this pause that we're getting to think through what our future might look like and how we could focus. I agree with Ms. Griego about how important it is that we come across as a pro-business community and that our city staff, who are doing a spectacular job, continue to interact with businesses that are interested in filling those spaces that will go dark, that we're ready to go.
Mr. Williamson?
You know, I have no further comment from what's been made. I would like to take this time to voice my appreciation as well of city staff and their efforts to control spending. And you know, we all expected much more dire consequences than we've been presented with. So I think we're fortunate in that.
Mr. Shu?
I kind of agree with Rusty and Karen in that. I think we're not as bad a shape as we are. I'd like to see us move forward to do some city work on the streets and a few things out there to get things going, that we're alive and well, and we're trying to get a lot of things done. I don't know how we sit on the paving and stuff like that, but I'd sure like to see some of that get done and some repair work done on other stuff. I know it's kind of a tough time, but if we can show people that we're willing to get out there and work and make the town better, I think that's going to help us too.
Well, you know, there's a few things that we could do, and of course, you know, one of the things, you know, Rusty is correct. You know, Fisher's Peak, I think, is going to be very helpful, probably starting next year. So that's going to be one item. We'll see how the Space to Create project comes around and comes alive. See what happens with it. You know, they're moving quite rapidly on that, and that's good to see. We just don't know what the second quarter will look like at this point in time. Hopefully that it will be like the first quarter and not look as dire as, like you said, we originally had thought. But one of the things that we really can do to, and I mentioned this, maybe a couple of months ago, to get the business owners and even residents to try to beautify their yards, to, you know, clean them up, sweep the streets, sweep the backs of their businesses. All this stuff will encourage people who come into our community to say, hey, you know, this is a nice, clean community. So I think we need to, if we can kind of encourage the businesses and the people, just to, those that are not doing it now, to start cleaning up. I think that would really help. I am happy to see that there are a lot of nice yards out there. I think it's because people can't go anywhere, so they're cutting their grass more often. They're planting flowers. They're doing different things. So, but there's other things that I think that can be done to beautify the city. And of course, we do have our flower program that's beginning to take hold. So, all of those little things like that will make us ready for anyone who comes into the community to say, this is a community that I want to come and visit. I want to either live here or have a business here. Any other comments?
Mayor, this is Mike. Just to let you know, I will pass on the kudos to staff. They've been doing great jobs. We haven't got all of our sales tax reports in. I know you're saying you don't think it's bad as I projected, and I pray that it isn't as bad as I projected, but it's a wait and see as far as our finances and how those come in. And then also I've been on conversations with DOLA, OEDIT, the Colorado Resiliency Office. Regionally, there together a plan for a road to recovery with their recovery and resilience team. So there may be a time when we can get some council members. It's a regional thing, some county commissioners across the board to support our region. So that's happening out there, and I just wanted to let you know that.
And before, like I said, we go on to the discussion of other agenda items, I also want to, give a big thank you to staff for the work that they're doing to try to keep expenses down and at the same time providing all the services that are necessary in our community. So thank you from me, and of course that's what we're hearing from all of the other council members. Does anybody in council have any agenda items that you would like to bring up for future work sessions? Yes, Mary.
This afternoon before this meeting, I was in an hour-and-a-half long conference call, Zoom meeting with the folks from Total Concepts, and what they do is it's a nonprofit that works with developers to create affordable housing, and then they work with social service agencies in the community to provide support services to the people who need the housing. A very, very competent professional group, and they were interested in how they might approach the city, and I suggested that that the next step would possibly be a work session. But I will talk with you, Mayor, about it more to give you more details. But really good group, really good ideas, and the funding for what they do comes from federal and state sources. It's not an organization that would be looking for the city to fund the work that they do, just to be a supportive neighbor and partner.
Yeah, good. Give me a call and we'll discuss it, and then we'll see if we can bring it on to the next work session. Any other items from council? Any suggestions? Les, do you have any items that you think maybe need to come in front of council on a work session?
Oh boy.
No, I'm gonna give you one. No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I still owe you guys a mural policy. So that's one, and I see that Georgie Clark is still on, and I know that Wally is on, and Audra, and with their help. So that is one. I can give you like 10 more items, but I don't dare because of how long tonight was. I'm just kidding. But that's one, and there are certainly others. But that's one, and that will be coming forward soon.
I'll talk to you about those, and I know that the mural is one that I talked to Mike about last week. So, let's go ahead. I'll call you.
Sounds good, Mayor. Thank you.
Mike, do you have anything that you'd like to bring forward in a work session?
Mayor, we're getting really close with Noah's Ark, and we are going to probably need a work session. I don't know if it's this next one or not, but that's out there, and we need to discuss that. And then, of course, the Commons. So, yeah.
Okay. Let me write something down here real quick, and we'll close it out. Okay. If there's no other discussion, we'll adjourn. Thank you. We had a long meeting, but it was very productive. Thank you very much.